Well, who likes flowers? Anyone like flowers? I quite like flowers. I don't grow flowers. I'm hopeless at gardening, but I like it when people bring me flowers. And Rod's not here. If he's online, then, I do like flowers. I love having them in the house. They're beautiful. They add colour and freshness. And when given by someone who's special to you, then it's an expression of love. As I said, I'm not really good at growing them myself, so normally they have to come from a store. I'd be quite unsuccessful otherwise. But I love the beauty in them. But in all honesty, some of them really smell. Some of them stink quite a lot. And I remember when Sheella was born, and when she was little, we have a picture of her on the screen. Oh, she's so cute. That's when Sheella was born, and we were living in the Philippines, and florists weren't really a store that was, on every street corner. And I actually don't think I'd ever seen a florist. And then Rod turned up at the hospital and had a bunch of flowers for me. So that was quite surprising. So there they are, and it was quite lovely. He brought them in, and I was so excited, and we put them in the corner, and I was actually in hospital for nearly a week because I got pneumonia, and it was all a bit of a drama, but that's another story for another time. And so these flowers were sitting in the corner, and it was so nice to have the colour in the room. But then after a while, they stank. And so they were full of lilies. Now, I've since learned I don't really like lilies very much, and there are certain ones, but these were really strong smelling, and it was starting to give me a headache or sinus or something. So anyway, we got the flowers and we put them into the little toilet ensuite area that's part of the room, shut the door thinking we'll hide them in there. Well, the next time I went to the bathroom, in this confined space, they were so bad. And so we both agreed that as much as I loved the sentiment and I was so happy for this gift of love to me, we presented them to the nurses to thank them for everything they'd done for us. And they happily took them far, far away. And so I might like the look of flowers, but there are many that might give me hay fever, allergies, or if they're lilies, a headache. So soft smells are nicer, and I think it's the same when it comes to perfumes. I don't like anything too strong. It makes me sneeze. I must have a very sensitive nose. Have you ever walked into a room or you've been somewhere and you've smelt something and it's taken you back to a situation, an experience, or reminded you of someone? I don't know if that's ever happened to you. Smells can remind us of experiences, of people or places. It's a bit like yesterday when I went to the shops and I was like, I've smelt that barbecue grill smell before. It's like walking down the streets of Manila when you have the good smells and smelling all that nice food cooking. Well, I remember a few years ago, it was not long after my dad had passed away. Now, my dad was into cycling. He was all his life. Like, I would come to church and a family within the church would pick me up and look after me, and my family would do cycling. So track racing, road racing. He was actually a commissaire with the Australian team at the Commonwealth Games a few years ago. So bikes was all I knew and all he knew. And he used to work in a bike store, and he used to sit out the back in his little corner. So there's his little corner, never any order to that corner. And he would sit there and he would tinker away at the bikes and fix all the bikes up for people. But I remember it was a few months after, and we decided we might get the girls a bike for Christmas. So I was in Ballarat, and we went down to one of the local bike stores, and I went inside, no thought in my mind apart from the fact we're going to buy a bike. As soon as I went in the store and I smelt the oil and the tyres, I just started crying, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? And it just reminded me of this little old dirty corner in the bike store in Burnie, Tasmania, where my dad used to sit. And I thought, I'm going to have to come back. I didn't realise that this would happen. So I went to leave, but no, the man had seen me. Excuse me, ma'am, can I help? Oh, hang on, that's the Philippines. And they call you ma'am everywhere there. Can I help you with anything? And so here I am going, well, I didn't realise I was going to have this effect on her. So I started to tell him what had happened. He was really lovely. And he goes, oh, who was your dad? And I told him, oh, Housey. I said, Gary House. He goes, Housey. I knew Housey. And he would been on the bike fields and everything, and they'd been to different races, and my dad was quite well known, and he'd been to Ballarat for the Herald Sun tour and all these things. So then we ended up having a great discussion. I think I might have got a discount on the bikes and all this sort of thing. So it was actually quite a handy conversation. But it's just interesting how different smells bring different things back. And but I wanted to do something this morning. And I wanted to see if I could have a volunteer to see if they can tell. If I was to blindfold you, could you tell what this smell is? So who would be willing to be my volunteer? Maybe. Did you say yes, Dale? Are you volunteering someone else? Amaya, would you like to be my volunteer? Good game's a quick game. Sha'ala would like to be my volunteer. Oh, now don't trip her over on the way out. You promised to be kind to people, remember? We've all heard it. It's on the street. All right, there. You put that on. Well, you might have to hold it in place. Stop, Mum. All right, I'm going to hold something under your nose, and you have to see if you can guess what the smell is. All right? Understand the concept? All right. Okay, this is the first one, no peeking. All right. You have to take a good whiff. Don't panic, they're not lilies. Yeah. Oh. Hang on.
Wait.
Okay, try again.
Vegemite.
What is it?
Vegemite.
Is she right, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, very good. Okay. Next. Oh, hang on a second. Okay. Then we have this one for the people playing at home. Okay. All right. Don't know if you'll know this one. Are you smelling?
Wait, let me...
You don't know?
No.
You've probably never had it. What is it? It stinks?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You don't win the prize. To win a prize, you had to get 3 out of 3. All right. No, I don't have a prize. Okay. She'll know this one. All right. What is it?
Nutella.
Nutella. Okay. You can take off your blindfold. So what's the one that you didn't know? What is that? It's coffee. Oh. Okay, thank you for your assistance today. You don't get a prize. I should have asked Holly if you could... Do you like Nutella? Is Nutella good? Do you like coffee? Coffee's bad for you. What about Vegemite? You don't like Vegemite either. You know, when I was living in the Philippines... The people would bring Vegemite over and give it to the children in the children's home. But they would either give it to them on a spoon. Who eats it on a spoon? No, seriously? Or really thick on the bread, and then they would hate it. I'm like, you need to have it properly. So you don't have Vegemite either. Do you have peanut butter? No? Cheese? Jam? Yeah, oh, you like cheese. All right, well, I have no cheese today. So there you go. So sometimes when you smell them, might take you back. What about coffee? Who loves coffee? Yeah, you love to enter into a cafe. I actually don't drink coffee at all, but I like to smell coffee. But anyway, sometimes we don't always have a pleasing smell or scent. Now, I don't mean physically. I'm not saying people stink, but you know how there are sometimes people who are not necessarily nice to be around. They don't really have this nice smell. You don't want to be around them. They may not have a pleasant attitude. They may not have a very nice personality. And then you sort of want to steer clear of them. Well, there's a verse in Ephesians 5:2, and it's part of what we read earlier. And it says, "Walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us, and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God." Well, I wanted to share a story of something that happened in our house the other day, and I apologise to Amaya because It was something that happened with her and I. But it's been a bit of a challenge at home over the last few weeks because when Rod was in the hospital, he was really struggling with what was happening for him, and he wasn't in a very good space himself. And then when he came home, it was a bit of a challenge as well, as he was trying to settle into the home, and there was a lot going on and a lot of expectations on me. And then I was exhausted because we'd be up in the night because of the pain and trying to get that under control. And so I was getting snappy and he was in a bad mood. And so if you're in a bad mood and the other person's not feeling well, what happens to the children? We're all in a bad mood, and life was going really great in that first week that he was home. And I realised, hang on, this isn't going so great. So I took the girls to the shop and got something nice. And we were having a chat about, and I apologised for the way that I was being, and I know I needed to be more aware and to take big, deep breaths before I started to have my thoughts and opinions in life. And so we were talking about that, and we came home quite happy and had a big conversation about it. Anyway, the next day Amaya was preparing for camp, and she normally uses 2 pillows, and she's like, well, I can only fit one in, what am I going to do? And I said, well, I don't know, you can only take one. She goes, how about I put some things underneath my pillow to lift it up, like some of my clothes or something? And I said, Amaya, that is such a great idea. That's really good. Well done on you for, coming to that solution. And she just looked at me and said, what's wrong with you? I said, I told you I was going to work on my attitude, and now I'm being nice and you can't take my niceness. And so she wasn't used to it, and me being nice. So anyway, maybe sometimes when we think that our attitude might be a little bit off, or we know we're not doing really great, we need to start thinking about, okay, what do I need to change within myself? Maybe our smell isn't going so great. The thing that we're reflecting around to people around us needs to be tweaked just a little bit. Sometimes there may be some who say harsh words at someone and they walk away without a thought to other people, and that's not really nice to be around either. Imagine the fragrance that leaves in the air when they leave, this feeling they leave behind when they're always not speaking nicely, and it's not really encouraging to want to be around that person. Without being a bit strange or a bit gross, have you ever noticed that someone who may not smell fantastic, after a while they don't even notice it in themselves? Sometimes you're like, just checking. Maybe it's gone on for some time and they don't realise it anymore and they don't recognise it in themselves. Well, in some way it's the same for us as Christians. When we start to let our attitude slide a little bit, or our time with God becomes less and we stop communicating with him as much as we should, pretty soon we're not really leaving a pleasant scent on the world. But the sad thing is we don't see it anymore because that's just become a natural part of who we are. We need to really intentionally strive to be fragrant, to be recognised as someone who is a good person with a good smell, a good attitude, someone who reflects Jesus in what they do and how they live their life. Did anyone see the World Championships in athletics last week? I think it was last week on the TV. I came across it unexpectedly. There were some quite good things to see. But there's a lady there called Nicola Olschlager. She's the high jumper for Australia, world champion high jumper. Has anyone seen her before? It's quite interesting to watch her do her thing. When she jumps, her face just radiates with pure joy. And when you see her, it's easy to be captivated because she has this beautiful smile. And there's just something about her, just something that shines through the screen. She seems to embody this real peace. And when she jumps, and we've got a photo of it here, she raises her hands in the air and then she lifts up her face towards the sky. And she's a Christian, and people know that she's a Christian. And it's a sign really as if she's offering what she's about to do to God, even as she jumps. Anything that she does in the public eye is what she does for God. And there was a reporter for Channel 7 when she jumped at the Olympics, actually. He actually said, you need to listen to Nicola talk about the way she combines her Christian faith and her world-class high jumping, and it makes perfect sense. He says the more she feels loved, the higher she jumps. The higher she jumps, the more she radiates love. So this is like a reporter on Channel 7 who's putting this out onto the television. When she goes and does her jumping, I think there's another photo here. She actually writes on her hand. So you see there it says, "Trust in Jesus." And so when they zoom in on her, when she's about to do her things on the TV, that's what they see. And there was another time she had "Jesus makes all things new." And it was when she actually, I think she got silver in the Olympic Games. She was interviewed live on the television, and she said, "My hope is that the stadiums will be filled, not just for the athletics, but we will see revivals that people will hear a message of faith." And it was on national television that she started to talk about her faith, and she didn't skip a beat. She was ready to share when they actually said to her, "Can you tell us a bit more about your faith?" This was on like the Olympics interviewing after she'd done the jump. So she spoke about how she'd encountered God's love in her life and also about the challenges she'd faced, but how she'd gotten through them. And she said that she was made for a purpose, but she decided to pursue God over sport. She still does the sport, of course, but God is her priority. She lives knowing that she is loved by God. So what an example that she is, not just to, those watching on the television, but she started this Christian sports group. And so when they go to these big events, all of the Christians of the sports gather together and they encourage others to join them and they share of their faith. No shame, just reflects the love that she has for God and a real peace and joy in her life. Well, when the Apostle Paul encourages us to imitate Christ in Ephesians 5:2, he uses some Old Testament examples or images of the Old Testament sacrifices. He talks about how, back in the day, offerings were were sacrificed upon an altar. And as the fire consumed the animal, then the aroma that came from that would be pleasing to God. When Christ gave himself up, his sacrifice was also pleasing to his Father. And then likewise, Paul encourages us, as he encourages us to live our life as Jesus did. As God's children, he says, we are called to imitate Jesus, to give ourselves as an offering, living for him in a way that is pleasing to him. So what aroma are we letting off to those around us in a way? So as we live for God, as we show love and we help others, we become a pleasing aroma to God. But not just to him, to those around us, to the people that we love. The fragrance of Christ pours forth in us and through us. And it's unforced and it's natural. So I was reading that in Ephesians 5:2, we have this word fragrant. When it's translated in this particular verse, it's actually a noun, not an adjective. So it's not just a descriptive word of, fragrant Debbie, but it's like how I would choose to live my life. It's a noun, it's a doing word, an aim that we would want to aim to be like Jesus, to live like him. And we are to model his self-sacrificial, extravagant love. What is the verse again? Walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us. Well, this concept of living as a fragrant offering is deeply linked to this biblical narrative. It symbolises a life that we need to have if we're wanting to live one that is pleasing and acceptable to God. And there's 4 ways that we can try and improve our fragrance, and they're very simple, so hopefully you'll leave here remembering them. The first one is to be kind. And Shell has got it already. She's decided she's going to show kindness. She's going to work on that. Is it always easy to show kindness to all people? It's hard, isn't it? We have to really work on it. So it seems simple, but it's actually something we really need to intentionally work towards. Nothing smells up a place more than someone who isn't being kind. It's totally opposite of what we're sometimes instructed to do. When we look at Ephesians 4:32, it reminds us again to be kind to one another. Be forgiving. Now this one's harder again. How can we be sending off a fragrant smell, being a good example if we hold grudges and never forgive those that we know that we should? Ephesians 4:32 says, "For forgiving one another, even as God has forgiven you." But this one isn't easy either, is it? And it's a whole nother sermon by itself, but it's something that we need to work towards to be a step in the right direction. Be joyful. Be joyful. Who was joyful on camp at 7 o'clock in the morning? No, everyone can be joyful at all times of the day. No one wants to be around a miserable person. Oh, please let me sit next to the grump. So, let that be me. No one enjoys being around miserable people. When you aren't happy in the Lord, that rubs off on other people. When you are happy in the Lord, imagine the difference you make to those around you. In other words, your bad smell spreads. Do we want our bad... Like what was happening a little bit in my house, a bit understandable with life, was a bit up and down over the last couple of weeks. But you have to stop yourself and go, I recognise what is happening in me and really try hard to change, what is happening within yourself. Find joy in the Lord. Study his word. Make sure you take time to have prayer and fellowship with other people and prayer and fellowship with God. Psalm 35:9 says, my soul shall be joyful in the Lord. It shall rejoice in his salvation. Hopefully that will then flow out into how we choose to be in our day-to-day. Be content. That's the fourth one. What an odour when someone who's not content, what they can put off. Grumbling and self-pity and finding the faults in everything, that can be difficult to take. It isn't refreshing to be around a discontented person. And I've learned in Philippians 4:11, it says, I have learned that in whatever state I am in, to be content, to trust in God and know that he is with you, no matter what is happening. So living our lives and to please and honour God is important. So a Christian life without a pleasing fragrance, it's not going to accomplish very much at all. So today we're being reminded of the importance that we need to live our life imitating Jesus. So what are we doing? We're living with joy. We're showing kindness and bringing a beautiful fragrance to the world where we live. Taking the steps to forgive and being content with what we have. Living with joy and kindness, bringing a beautiful fragrance into the world where we are, being compassionate, serving others, and living as Jesus would. It seems like just a fairly simple thing. It's something to work towards. Ephesians 5:2 again. Walk in the way of love. Live a life of love. Reflect love, just as Christ did for us. And that's the challenge for us today. Let me share in a prayer with you this morning. Lord God, in the stillness we thank you. Thank you for the reminder of how you're wanting us to live and how we need to be imitating you, living as you lived, to be able to reflect you in our day-to-day. What a challenge you've placed on our hearts this morning, and we want to walk the way of love. We want to imitate you. And sometimes that means we need to do things in a different way. God, we want our lives to be an offering, not just any offering, but a fragrant offering to you. And in praying all of these things, we ask that you would help us to see what we need to do differently. Help us to be kind, forgiving, joyful, and content, so that our lives would honour you. It is our hope that we would bring your fragrance into our families, into our workplace and into our schools. God, change our heart if that's what's needed, so that we can live for you wherever we are. Help us to do this to the best of our ability and as we trust in you each day. Amen. Amen.